Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture number 22 of Global Business Management, and the topic of today's lecture is entering foreign markets. We have 5 learning objectives for today's lecture. The first one is appreciate the relationship between the strategy and the firm's choice of entry mode. The second one is appreciate some pitfalls of exporting. Be familiar with the steps a firm can take to improve its export performance. Understand the mechanism of export and import financing. And the last one is strategic alliances. Okay, before we start talking about today's thing, important thing I should mention in the beginning of this lecture that this is the continuation of we are discussing the same chapter what we discussed in the last lecture. This is the entry mode. And in entry mode, in a way, lecture number 21 and 22 are about entry mode. And in the last lecture, we had discussed about several factors that affects on the entry mode. The first factor was transportation cost, trade barriers, political risk, economic risks, costs, and firm strategy. Transportation cost. Transportation, we have seen this thing that the transportation cost is the important factor which decides or will determine the mode of the entry. If the country is far away from the other in the new market, might be firm will not prefer to do the export or import. Might be firm will do some other mode of entry. For instance, firm can do the joint venture, or firm can do some sort of a wholly owned subsidiary there. This is the important thing that when we think about the transportation cost, firm is not only involved in shipping the products or importing or exporting the products. It's also involved like if firm is trying to establish a new production unit in another market, might be it needs some technology, some machinery from the home country. In that case, firm has to ship that machinery, that equipment from the home country to the host country. And in that case, of course, the transportation cost will be a determining factor. Trade barriers. Now, trade barriers is also a determining factor. Trade barriers include the tariff and non-tariff related barriers, and some countries which have the good relationship with each other, they don't have the trade barriers. And in trade barriers, the countries who have not that so good relationship with each other, what they can do, they can impose some trade restrictions, some trade quotas, some sort of other barriers to prohibit, to discourage firms to enter in the market. Like the very famous example is like when firms are the US firms, when the automobile US firms, they wants to export their product to the Japanese market. Japanese government, they were on the paper, on the front, they were not saying, they are not declining this thing that, oh, we don't allow you guys to enter in our market. What they say, what they used to do, they used to reject their product on the basis of poor quality of they were claiming that when the government put the formal complaint for this thing, they are complaining that the Japanese government is using the trade restrictions on US firms to enter in the Japanese market, but they were saying that US products are not up to their standard. That's why we cannot allow you to export the product to our market. What the US firms did because of this trade restrictions, they changed the mode of entry. Rather than exporting the products, they did the wholly owned subsidiaries in the Japanese market. They went there and they established their own production unit in Japanese market, and they start producing the products there and then start selling the products in the same market. You can see the difference. Because of trade barriers, a firm can switch from one mode to another, or from decide some other mode. Trade barrier is an important determining factor of entry mode. Okay, political risk, economic risk, these are the risks associated with the host country. These mean if the political risk or economic risk are really high, firm have the more uncertainty of operations, and because of uncertainty the cost of operations is very high. Might be the investor will be reluctant to invest in that market, and because of that uncertainty. The cost mean it can be the human capital cost, or it can be the cost of raw material or gross products. These costs, for instance, the human capital, the labor, skilled labor or the semi-skilled labor, the cost, the wage rate of in certain countries is very low compared to the another one, and it determines the mode of entry. Like for instance, it will be expensive for the firms to produce the product in the USA and export it to the Thailand. Rather, what they can do, they can go there and build their own production unit, or make a joint venture in the Thailand, and then export and produce the stuff there in Thailand and sell in Thailand. That would be the cheaper way, and that is more appropriate way because of the costs. The last one is firm strategy. Firm strategy also, firm vision, mission, firm's objective, firm's internal strategy, and firm's internal structure. These things are also determine the mode of entry. Okay, the choice of foreign markets will depend on their long-run profit potential. Okay, another point that's very important is when the firm is going to select a market, they have to see not only in the short run, they have to see in the long run. And in the long run, they have to see a good growth potential of that firm. If that market has a growth potential in the long run, then they are going to choose the market. Next one is the favorable markets. There are some favorable markets, and then some firms are less favorable markets. What are the characteristics of favorable markets? Favorable markets are politically stable, they have free market systems, have relatively low inflation rate, and have low private sector debt. These are the characteristics of favorable markets. Favorable market and the less favorable markets. Less favorable market are politically unstable, have mixed or command economies, have excessive level of borrowing. Favorable markets, if we say that the developing countries are the favorable market and the less developed markets are not favorable, are less desirable market. But we cannot say that we cannot postulate this thing that firms do not go in those markets which are less desirable markets. These are less desirable markets. Markets which are firm go there, firm do operate there, but they have some different characteristics, and they have some risks, uncertainties associated with that market. And especially in order to avail the growth opportunities in those markets, these are like countries like India, Indonesia, or Malaysia, or you can imagine the country of South Africa or Nigeria or Ghana. These are the big countries, and they have the big population. And what about their the consumers and the people who can buy the products of those multinational companies who are sitting in the Western countries, and those companies are in fact what they are seeing the growth opportunities, or they are considering those countries as the big markets who have the big potential for their profitability, and that's why they are going to operate there as well. Markets are also more attractive when the product in question is not widely available or satisfied and met need. The another point is if those products have not introduced earlier in that market, and might be the customers do not know their demands are not met before. In that case, of course, there is another window opening window is available there for the companies to enter in that market. Okay, next aspect is the timing of entry. Entry is also early when the firms enters a farm market before other firms. Entry is late when the other firms enter before then this firm. Okay, entry can be the early entry or can be the late entry. If you make entry before other rival, it's early entry. If you make your entry after your rival, that will be the late entry. If you make your entry before your rival, that will be the first mover. You are going to get the first mover advantage. First mover advantage, the ability to preempt rival by establishing a strong brand name. This is the very important benefit of first mover advantage, and that you can go there and establish your brand name because you don't have any competitor at that time in that market. And the ability to build up sales volume and ride down the experience curve, and because of the experience and because of the knowledge of that market, you can reduce the cost of your products. Like we have discussed this concept earlier, that with the passage of time on the experience curve, the cost curve goes like this, and this is the cost. On the horizontal axis we have the cost. In the early stage, in the early period, the cost is higher. When we go down, with the passage of time, it goes down. That means the cost goes down as well. On the experience curve, with the passage, why? Because of the experience. Because of the experience, labor productivity get increased. Managers know how to deal with the local employee. Managers know to deal the market. They learn the market. They know how to deal with the distributors, suppliers, how to market their product. These are the different things they know with the passage of time. They learn these things. And ability to create. These are the different advantages associated with the first mover. But after choosing which market to enter and the timing of entry, firms need to decide a scale of entry, market entry. But there are some disadvantages also associated with the first mover, like uncertainty and risk. Might be and there is a chance of failure, and the other firms are going to learn from your experience, and then they are going to make their decisions. You are trying with your money. They are going to learn the lesson. They are getting some learning on your money, on the money of first mover. These are the disadvantages associated with the first mover. Another thing is to what scale, on to what level, कितने पैसे आप invest करें, to what extent do you have to invest the money there, and that's another question. If you invest too much in early stage, that will be a huge risk, and if there is a failure, then there will be the big loss of money. Firms that enter a market on a significant scale make a strategic commitment to the market. The decision has a long-term impact and difficult to reverse. Important thing is when you invest at a greater scale and you make a strategic commitment, and it is not reversible. Might be reversible. If you fail the project, in that case you will leave the market. Otherwise, you have already made the commitment, and it's not possible for you to leave so early. Okay, the entry mode. There are 6 sort of entry modes, and there are different advantages, and each mode has its own advantages, its own some good things, positive aspects associated with it, and negative aspects. For instance, the exporting. The advantages with exporting is the ability to realize location, experience curve economies. These are advantages. The disadvantage is high transportation costs, trade barriers, problem with local marketing agents. These are the 3 disadvantages associated with exporting. Now the turnkey contracts. Turnkey contracts, the ability to earn return from the process, technology skills in countries where FDI is restricted. If the FDI is restricted, then the return from the process technology skill in countries. This is the advantage. And the negative thing is creating efficient competitors, lack of long-term market presence. These are the two disadvantages associated with the turnkey contracts. The third point is the entry mode is the licensing, low development cost and risks, lack of control over technology, inability to realize location and experience curve economies, inability to engage in global strategic coordination, and franchising. This is the fourth mode, low development cost and risks. And what are the disadvantages of franchising? Lack of control over quality, inability to engage in global strategic coordination. Joint ventures, access to local partners' knowledge, sharing development costs and risks, politically acceptable. And the disadvantages of joint venture: lack of control over technology, inability to engage in global strategic coordination, inability to realize location and experience economies, and the last one is the wholly owned subsidiary. The advantages are protection of technology, ability to engage in global strategic coordination, ability to realize location and experience economies. But the disadvantage is it's really high cost and risky. What are the core competencies and entry mode? The optimal entry mode depends on some degree of the nature of the firm's core competency. Now, we had discussed the several factors which determine the entry mode for the firm. Now we talk about there are some other factors like competency, core competency, which also determine the entry mode for the firm. When a firm's competitive advantages based on proprietary technology know-how, the firm should avoid licensing and joint venture arrangements unless it believes its technological advantage is only transitory, or that it can establish its technology as a dominant design in the industry. It's saying this thing: if the firm's core competency lies in the technological know-how, firms should avoid the licensing and they should avoid the joint venture, because there is a possibility of leaking that technology to the partner, and in that case firm is transferring its core competency to the another company, and mean firm is deliberately involving in such situation where competitor can or potential or current competitor can take the advantage of its technology from its core competency. When a firm's competitive advantage is based on the management know-how, the risk of losing control over the management skill is not so high. Important thing is when a firm's competitive advantage lies in management know-how, like the German firms or Japanese automobile firms, their core competency is management know-how. They can involve in joint venture. They can do that because there is not possibility that they are going to lose the management skills, because it's not benefit from getting greater use of brand name is significant. Might be because of the other benefits what they are getting from the joint venture will be greater compared to what they are going to lose the management skills through the joint venture. Other company will learn your management skills, how you are managing the company, but might be the other advantage what you are getting from your partner will be greater than this. Pressure for cost reduction and entry mode. This is another thing. When pressure for cost reduction is high, firms are more likely to pursue some combination of exporting and wholly owned subsidiaries. Now we are talking about another factor which determines the mode of entry, and it's the cost reduction, pressure of cost reduction. Pressure of cost reduction is really high if they're in the market, in that industry the competition is really high, or there are a lot of competitors already exist in the market. In that way you have to compete with the cost, and you have to offer the price at least at that level or at the lower level of that, unless you are offering the you are offering some value, you are creating the value, really high value products. In that case, you can set the price above the market. But normally, when the pressure of cost reduction is high, in that case, more likely you are going to adopt a strategy which will be the combination of exporting and wholly owned subsidiary. This will allow the firm to achieve location and scale economies, as well as retain some degree of control over its worldwide product manufacturing and distribution. Main important thing is you, in that case, when you are when you are operating in a market where cost pressure is really high, what you are going to do, you are going to choose a mode of entry with the mixture of exporting wholly owned subsidiary. And exporting a wholly owned subsidiary, you can take the benefit of location and scale economies. Location and scale economies mean, of course, when you are producing the product in your home country and you are exporting, of course, in that way, the number of quantity, the number of products, the quantity of the products that you produce is higher compared to if you are only serving in the domestic market. That will reduce the cost per unit, and this will give you the economy of scale. And but on the other hand, if you are means simultaneously you are operating there in that market through the wholly owned subsidiary as well. Wholly owned subsidiary will give you the complete tight control in that market of your product, and you can keep and you can control the production quality of your products in that market, and you can control the distribution channel. You can control, because you are sitting there, and you can control all those channels. You can distribute, you can change, you can control the distribution channel, you can distribute, you can check the, you can just kick off the agent involved in the import-export relationship. You, rather than doing that, you're involving that agent. You can use your own wholly owned subsidiary there, and you, through that subsidiary, you can serve the export as well. So firms pushing global standardization or transnational strategies prefer wholly owned subsidiary. Like we have already discussed this thing, that when a the pressure of cost is really high, and firm will go from global standardization, firm pursue global strategy or transnational strategy. And in that strategy, when they are pursuing the global strategy or transnational strategy, they will pursue those strategies through wholly owned subsidiaries. Okay, now this is only a review question which will check your performance. If a firm wants to open, if firm wants the option of global strategy coordination, the firm should choose franchising. If a firm wants the option of global strategic coordination, they have to choose franchising, joint ventures, licensing, or wholly owned subsidiary. Answer of this exact question is available in previous slides, in 2 slides ago, I guess. Otherwise, you can find the answer in the book. Firm can establish a wholly owned subsidiary in the country by using a greenfield strategy. What is a greenfield strategy? Building a subsidiary from the ground up, from the scratch to end. You are going to build your own production unit there. Using a acquisition, you are acquiring the existing firm in that market. These are the 2 ways you can use through when you are following the wholly owned subsidiary. Either you can use the greenfield strategy, or you can acquire a existing unit in that market. Acquisition are attractive because what are the good things with acquisition? They are quick to execute. They enable firms to preempt their competitors. acquisition may be less risky than greenfield ventures. They are quick to execute. Okay, you just make the agreement with the new company and you start business in the new market. That's very quick. Just you have to sign the agreement, find the partner, and just make the agreement. Next one is it's enable firms to preempt their competitor, and it will enable your firm. It will enable firms to do or take some action before your competitors. Before your competitors, it's a preemptive measure. And the last one is less risky than the greenfield investment. Because less risky, how can this be less risky? Because the greenfield investment, like we said, it's from start to end, from start to ground up. The whole thing you are going to do by yourself. In that case, you are required to invest a lot, which involves, of course, the big investment, big strategic commitment requires the huge risk. But on the other hand, when you acquire firm from acquires another firm or some part of it, that's less risky, because that firm already know this is already working in that market. That firm already know the market, already have the some distribution channel or suppliers are already associated with it. That firm is already have the employees who are already trained, who are already have the experience curve. That firm have already experience curve, and with the passage of time, the cost of the production is already reduced in that market. And because of these things, on the other hand, while establishing a new subsidiary, through the greenfield investment, greenfield venture, you are going to build a new project, a new plant there, and you are everything what we discussed, you are going to do from the scratch. You are going to do by your own. You are going to train your employees. You are going to hire your employees. You are have to find the skilled people. You have to then train them, and you have to wait when their productivity will be increased because of the experience, because of the learning. On the other hand, you have to find yourself through the suppliers and the best supplier, and with the passage of time, you learn these things, that which supplier is the best. Similarly, it goes for the distributor, the best distributor, how you are going to market your products. These are the things, and you are going to learn the new market by yourself. And like we have discussed, the disadvantages of this strategy, that might be it can be a big failure because it involves a strategic commitment. So it's less risky. The acquisition is the less risky compared to the greenfield ventures. But there are some disadvantages associated with acquiring firms as well. The acquiring firm overpays for the acquired firm. There is possibility that firm is going to overpay for the acquired firm. Might be if we intend to buy some company in China, might be there is possibility we cannot estimate the exact price of the worth of that company. Might be we will overpay for that company. That's the first disadvantage. The second one, the culture of the acquiring and acquired firm clash. Might be there is a possibility that the culture, the norms, the values, how this agreement should go, the culture can create a hurdle between the acquiring and acquired firm. Attempts to realize synergies run into the roadblock and take much longer than forecast. Okay, now we are talking about that, for instance, we have just acquired a certain part of the new firm, and in that case we are going to work together in the future. And if considering this scenario, we can see this thing that firms need a synergy to work together. And synergy goes down in the hierarchy, and from the higher management to middle to lower management, and the people should be should understand each other, and it will take time, and there is a risk, might be there is a cultural clash, or some differences will occur in the future, and there will be possibility that the synergies will not come between those different this acquisition acquiring and acquired firms. There is inadequate pre-acquisition screening. Might be there is possibility that firm is deceived by the facts offered by the acquiring firm, by the acquired firm. Might be firm does not know the actual facts and figure, and it, like we said, might be it will overpay the other firm. And similarly, might be firm doesn't know the growth potential or growth market, the total market or market capitalization of that firm, and so might be there is a possibility that firm will couldn't screen good in earlier before making this deal. To avoid these problems, what the firm should do? The first step that firm should do to avoid these disadvantages, these problems, carefully screening the firm to be acquired. Firm has to be screened really carefully. In order to screen, there are some ways, some things. The first thing is to gather the information completely, and that information can be obtained from the websites and of that firm, and while talking with the executives of that firm. This is the first way. Second thing is firm can gather the information up through their previous partners, some strategic partners, and might be some previous that firm can gather the information from the lenders, from the banks who are dealing with that company. Firm can gather the information from the distributor or that channel, or some not only the distributor but also the supplier of that company as well. And the last thing is firm can get the information about that company through the former employees of that company. Then when they get gather all the information, then that firm will make a good and clear picture, a complete picture about that new firm, and move rapidly once the firm is required to implement an integration plan. Okay, when firm is already acquired, what the firm should do, they can go quickly, and they should integrate these two firms together very quickly, because when they are going to make or integrate the two firms with the slow pace, there is a possibility of the employees or workers in those or managers, they will be concerned about their jobs and of course it will affect on their productivity. So when they are going to, the employees should be clear about their roles, clear about the future of the company, their future, and this should be clear, and this information should be passed on down in the hierarchy as well. But important thing is this integration process should be very quicker. Okay, now we talk about the main advantages of the greenfield investment. Greenfield investment, on the other hand, is a greater ability to build the kind of subsidiary company that it wants. What exactly you want, you can build it by yourself, and you are going to own it. This is the biggest advantage. And might be if you have, for instance, if you have some technological know-how, that's your competitive advantage. What you can do, you can build your own production unit, and you can keep it with yourself, and there is no chance, and nobody else is going to steal that technological upgradation, some technological advancement that you have. There is no risk for that thing, for stealing or spillovers. Greenfield ventures are slower to establish. This is the negative things. Now, its negative thing is it takes time to start up making a production unit from scratch to the whole plant. It takes time, and it's really risky. The second thing is it's risky. Risky mean, of course, a big investment is involved in building a plant, and it's risky, because if it gets failed, then the whole bulk of money, the big investment, will be lost. Well, now the question is, the choice between the greenfield investment and the acquisition depend on the situation, which mode firm should choose. The choice between a greenfield investment and acquisition depends on the situation confronting the firm. Acquisition may be better when a market already has well-established competitors, and when global competitors are interested in building a market presence. This is the first condition. Which one you should choose? It depends. It depends on the market situation. When there is a huge competition and the competitors already exist in the market, or the competitors intend to enter in that market as well. In that scenario, acquiring another firm is more suitable. A greenfield venture may be better when the firm needs to transfer organizationally embedded competencies, skills, routines, and culture. Now we are talking about when greenfield investment is perfect. Greenfield investment is really good when firms intend to keep the same culture or culture of the company, or the technological skills or the competency of the firm. In that case, our special company has a special routines or some competency which is management skill or organizationally embedded competencies are there for the firm. In those cases, the greenfield investment is much better choice for the companies. Okay, now the question that you are going to review your knowledge with the help of this question. All of the following are the advantages of acquisition except they are quicker to execute, it is easy to realize synergies by integrating the operations of the acquired entities, and they enable firms to preempt their competitors, and they may be less risky. All of the following are the advantages of acquisition except, I read again, they are quicker to execute, it is easy to realize synergies by integrating the operations of the acquired entities, they enable firms to preempt their competitors, and they may be less risky. The answer of this question lies in the previous slides. Now let's talk about the strategic alliances. We have already seen this strategic alliances before, and we are therefore we are quickly go through the main points of the strategic alliances. It refers to the cooperative agreements between the potential and actual competitors. Strategic alliances range from formal joint ventures to short-term contractual agreements. The number of strategic alliances has exploded in recent years, like we had already discussed, because of the globalization. The strategic alliances number of strategic alliances is increasing in recent decades. Strategic alliances facilitate entry into the foreign market. It helps firms to entry into the foreign market where might be the direct entry is more risky or more expensive. In that case, firms can enter into the strategic alliance, and they can choose a strategic partner in that market, and with the help of that partner they can enter in that market. Allow firms to share the fixed cost. The next point is it reduces the fixed cost of developing new product and project. Both of the companies are going to share that cost. Bring together complementary skills and assets that neither partner could easily develop on its own. If firms cannot develop some others required competency by its own, what they can do, they can enter within the strategic partnership, and they can learn from each other. They can learn and they can use this competency of the other partner. The last point is they can help a firm establish technological standards for the industry that will benefit the firm. Strategic alliances give competitors low-cost routes of new technology in markets. but unless a firm is careful, it can give away more than it receives. Mean that it shows that strategic partnership is a risky thing. Though it is low cost routes to the new technology, firm can learn a new technology and in the market, and they can give access to the new market. But important thing is there is a risk as well. Risk is that might be your partner is going to steal that technology or that core competency what you have. The success of alliance is a function of partner selection, alliance structure, the manner in which alliance is managed. There are three things involved in strategic alliance. A good partner. A good partner helps the firm achieve its strategic goals and has the capabilities the firm lacks and that it values. These are the characteristics of the good partner. Shares the firm's vision for the purpose for the alliance. It is unlikely to try to opportunistically exploit the alliance for its own ends, that it to exploit the firm's technological know-how while giving away little in return. These are the attributes of the good partner. Once a partner has been selected, the alliance should be restructured. What should be the structure of that strategic alliance? To make sure difficult to transfer the technology, be with contextual safeguard written in the alliance agreement to safeguard against the risk of opportunistic behavior, to allow for skills and technology swap with the equitable gains, to minimize the risk of opportunism by an alliance partner. After selecting the partner and structuring the alliance must be managed. Successfully managing an alliance requires managers from both companies to build interpersonal relationship. Interpersonal relationship should not be only on the top of the manager, it should come to the middle management and lower management as well. A major determinant of how much a firm gains from an alliance is the ability to learn from its alliance partner. Okay, now let's talk about the exporting and importing strategy. Government information. Okay, government information source. This is the first point. When firms intend to, or firm decide that it can or it should export their products into the foreign market, what they should do. The first thing is there is some services from the government. Firm should contact to the government services, government center. These institutes might be. And those centers, they are going to provide information about the new market, about the export market. Government information sources. Firm should use the government. What sort of information they which is required? Firm should get the information like what's the growth potential, what are the existing companies operating in that industry, and what are the. This is just like behaving. Investment gateway center, like potential partners. What is the economic and political stability? What is the economic condition? The level of debt? The thing that we had discussed in the last lecture. The government information sources, they provide this sort of information about the new market, and exporting company used to get that information before starting making any decision about the export. The next thing is export management company. If a firm does not have any experience of export, and this is the first time firm is doing the export, what these firms can do, they can hire the services of the consultants. These consultants are the export management companies. Export management companies, what they do, they can fix the whole arrangement between. They are going to acquire the information from the government. In fact, they have already the information about the new market, about the competitors, about the price, about the growth opportunities, the prospects, the distribution channels, about all these things. They have already know about the future that market. What they can do, a firm can hire these services and start their exporting with the help of the export management company. Now the things comes the lack of trust. There is one trouble with the exporter and importer, the lack of trust. Firms like, for instance, just take an example, Pakistani firm is exporting to China. What can happen? There is a possibility that might be Pakistani firm ship their product to the China. For instance, Sankyang. They ship the product to Sankyang, and the Chinese firm who is sitting in the Sankyang, might be they delay the payment. Might be they will not pay the payment at all. Might be there is some. Might be they can create some trouble with the payment. I mean, there is some, because of these things. There is one element which is the lack of trust between the exporter and importer. And because of this thing, this factor, lack of trust, there are a lot of firms who wants to just to stay in the domestic market. They don't want to indulge in the foreign market, and they don't want to indulge themselves in the export business because of the lack of trust. Okay, there are two important concepts which are commonly used in the export and import business. The first one is a letter of credit, which is also abbreviated as a L&S, L/S, issued by what is a letter of credit? Letter of credit is issued by a bank at the request of the importer. It states that the bank will pay a specified sum of money to a beneficiary, to the exporter. For instance, take the example like this: Pakistani firm is intended to bring some stuff from the China, from some Chinese firm. They make some agreement, but because of the lack of trust thing, what they can do, they can involve bank in between them, and banks are going to play as a middleman. And what will be the role of the bank? Pakistani firm will go to the bank and they will tell them that, oh, we are willing to buy some products from this Chinese firm, and can you please give me a letter of credit which shows my credit worthiness, which shows that I will pay. And this letter of credit guarantees that this firm, Pakistani firm, will pay the amount to the exporter. This is the only thing. It gives the guarantee. And how the banks give the guarantee? Through the letter of credit. Firm is going to the bank is going to check the credit worthiness of that company, and it might be they will ask for some collateral, or might be some ask for some references, or might be some ask for some deposits, some deposits, some partial or fully deposits from that company. Or that can be, the letter of credit can be used by the company or the individual person who is intended to import some products. This is the basics of the letter credit. Another thing is draft. Draft is used like in Pakistan, and Pakistani importer is going to use a letter of credit. In Chinese, in China, the Chinese exporter who is going to send the products to the Pakistani company, they are going to use a draft. What is a draft? A draft, also referred as a bill of exchange, used for payment in international transaction. Okay, it is simply an order written by an exporter instructing an importer or an importer's agent to pay specified amount money at a given time. We will discuss it importantly we can say this thing, that draft is used as a written agreement or written statement which says that if we continue with the example of the Pakistani and Chinese import-export example, Pakistani firm is the importer and Chinese is the exporter. Pakistani firm is going to use the letter of credit through the bank, which shows that this firm will pay you, and I'm going to guarantee this. This is the letter of credit, and which Pakistani firm is going to show. This bank, Pakistani bank, is going to deliver to Chinese firm or Chinese bank. Okay, what the Chinese bank guy, Chinese firm is going to do? When the Chinese are going to ship the products to the Pakistani firm, what they are going to do? They are going to their bank, which is connected with our Pakistani bank, and they are going to deliver. They are going to show the receipt to the Chinese bank that, oh, see, I have already delivered the products, and this is the delivery time. And when this Chinese firm is going to show that this receipt to the Chinese bank, and then Chinese bank is going to discuss this thing, is going to talk with the Pakistani bank that, oh, our client has already shipped the product to the Pakistani firm, to the Pakistan. Now you have to release the money, and then Pakistani bank is going to pay the money to the Chinese bank, who is going to pay forward to the Chinese firm. That's how it will go. And graphically, we see in the later slides how it goes. Okay, there are 3 ways how import-export transaction is carried out. The first one is the figure. The first figure, the preference of a U.S. export. There is to import-export. One is from the U.S. and one is from the France. French is the importer, is importing the products. Americans are the exporters. Now what they can do, there is no middleman, no banks involved, and there is a direct transaction. What they are going to do, if you see number 1, importers pays for the goods. Like in a traditional way, we can imagine about this transaction. Importer is paying the money to the American company, to the American exporter. Importer pays for the goods, and in against this thing, when they receive the money, American exporter ships the good after being paid in second step, in arrow drawn under the blocks. First the exporter receiving the receive the money, and then exporter ship the product. This is the first scenario. The second scenario is exporter ships the good first. Exporter is not getting. Importer is not paying first. Exporter is ship the product first, and then importer is going to pay the money once he receives the products. This is the second way. This is totally understandable as well. But only difference is products are shipped before the money is transferred. Now the third scenario, when there is a lack of trust, like we have discussed before, now there is a third party, and third party is the bank. In the first, and this is the third figure. As you can see, the first point, importers obtain the bank promissory to pay on importer's behalf. This is the letter of credit. Importers obtains. The French importer, like French is importing, French is bringing the stuff from the USA. French importer is going to the bank, and bank is going to give him a letter of credit, and which is a guarantee that, oh, this guy is going to pay you. And this bank is going to, this is the central bank, international bank, and this bank is, in the next step, if you see, bank promises exporters to, then this bank is going to talk with the exporter, okay, and say this, that, oh, see, I'm going to give you the guarantee that this guy is going to pay you. Okay, bank promises exporter to pay on behalf of the, if it's not going to pay, I'm going to pay. And this is the promise, exporter to pay on behalf of the importer. This is the point number 2. And what against this promise, what the exporter is going to do? He is going to export the products, like is shown in the figure in the point 3. Exporter ship to the bank. Exporter is not shipping directly to the importer. What he is doing is shipping to the bank. In the third point, and in the fourth point, bank pays to the exporter. Bank and the exporter gets the money. And in the fifth point, Bank gives merchandise to the importer, and then merchandise pays the bank in the sixth step. Then what's the benefit of the bank? Bank is getting its commission from the both sides because of facilitating to importer and exporter and making their deal smoothly. Okay. Typical international trade transaction. There are several steps involved in it. The first one is the importer orders the good. As we can see in the top of the line, the first point first. Importer orders the goods. Importer, French importer, and then there is the American one. In the next line, exporter agrees to fill the order. Exporter is agreed to ship the products. This is just they are agreed now. A contract is made. In the third point, as you see on the right hand side, importer arranges for the letter of credit. It goes to the bank. French importer is going to the bank and try to get the letter of credit. Point number 3. Then bank, as you can see in the last line in the bottom, the bank of, for instance, we are talking about the importer, French importer, and the French importer went to the bank, for instance, the Bank of Paris, and the Bank of Paris, Bank of Paris is, as you can see in the point 4, Bank of Paris sends letter of credit to Bank of New York, which is the bank associated with the exporter in the point 4. And Bank of New York informs exporter of letter of credit. Bank informs to the letter of credit to the exporter that, okay, I have received a letter of credit from the French bank on you now. And what the exporter do? Exporter ship the products to France in number 6. And after this, once it's shipped to the France, what's the exporter do? In the number 7, exporter presents draft to the bank. This receipt that I have already shipped the product, this to the bank, and bank send this draft to the Bank of Paris. Bank of New York send this draft to the Bank of Paris in number 8. And in number 9, Bank of Paris in return. Bank of Paris return accepted draft to Bank of New York. And number 10 and 11, exporter sells draft to the bank. In number 10 and 11, exporter sells to the bank. And on the other hand, in number 12, banks of this Bank of Paris tells importer document have been arrived. And once the document have been, importer pays bank. Importer give the money to the bank. This is this is the point number 13, and the whole transaction is completed. And what's the role of the bank? They are getting their commission, and the transaction is executed smoothly. Okay, here again there is one case study of red spot paint and varnish. This is again about a company about red spot paint, and this is the US company, and this company started to initiate its operations in the international market, and this how and what sort of entry they have made. And this is the case which is discussed in this case study. This is a really interesting case study. I really encourage you guys to read this case study, and we can discuss the major points in the next lecture. Okay, now let's talk about the summary of the lecture, what we had discussed today. In this lecture, we had discussed about the first point that we had discussed is the technological know-how. When a firm's competitive advantage is based on technological know-how, the firm should avoid licensing. These are the conditions when firms should avoid the licensing and prefer to the joint venture. These are the things. And when a firm competitive based on the management know-how, the risk of losing control over the management skill is not high. That's the second point. Firms can establish a wholly owned subsidiary in a country by there are two ways to establish a wholly owned subsidiary. The first one is the greenfield strategy, in which a firm has to build a subsidiary from the ground up, and the second one is acquire that firm, a new firm in that market. Acquisition are attractive because they are quick to execute, they enable firms to preempt their competitors, and maybe it's less risky. But acquisition can fail when the acquisition firm overpays for the acquired firms. Culture of the acquiring and acquired firms clash. Attempts to realize synergies into the roadblocks and take much longer than forecast. There is inadequate pre-acquisition screening. The main advantages on the greenfield investment is on the other hand is it gives the firms a greater ability to build a kind of subsidiary company that it wants. However, greenfield investment is slow to establish and it involves huge risk. Acquisition may be better when the market already well established and global competitors are interested in building a market presence in that market. While on the other hand, greenfield venture may be better when the firm needs to transfer organizationally embedded competencies, skills, and routine and culture. These are the conditions when firm has to prefer greenfield investment or acquisition. Choice of strategic partner we have discussed. And what should be the characteristics of the good partner, and what should be the structure of the strategic partnership, and how firms should manage the strategic alliance. In the end, we had discussed about the three modes of interaction between the importers and exporters, how importer and exporter, who is going to pay first and who is paying later on. These are the three things, and what is the role of the bank and lower role of the letter of credit and draft in export and import. And these are the things when in these three entities, the importer, exporter, and the banks can involve and they can perform their duties to execute the import and export business more smoothly. Thank you for today. Allah Hafiz.